Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned for this random video about nothing in particular, because the video that we were going to do requires more than 20 minutes to actually do. It actually is going to require a little bit of time to do, and I'm like, oh man, no time. I haven't had much time, so here we are just talking randomly about random bookish things. So, what the hell are we going to talk about? Roger, what do you have? Roger has nothing to say. He's not here helping me out at all. Come on, Roger. No. No help. So, random bookish things here at Stately Vaughan Manor. Random bookish thing number one, I started To Be a Man by William Deckard, which is for June on the Range, reading a bunch of westerns for June. And this is the third western I'm reading for June on the Range. I'm only 30 pages in, but it's excellent. I just started this morning. Really enjoying this. My friend Douglas sent this to me. Appreciate it, because this looks like it's going to be a good one. I mean, I could already tell. What, Rhonda? Shh, quiet. Quiet, you. None of your nonsense. Anyway, I can already tell that, I can already tell exactly where this book is going, I think. I can kind of figure out what Western tropes are going to be used in this particular book, but really well written and really engaging. So this looks like a winner. To Be a Man by William Deckard. I will let you know how this book ends up being. The next book I read, though, probably will not be a Western. I've also got all of these other bookish projects going on, which you might have seen if you saw that video I did on my projects recently. But I've got the vintage science fiction, and I don't want to go a month without reading a vintage science fiction book, because I've got to read them all before I die. That is the project, the vintage science fiction project. And so I'll probably be reading Adventures on Other Planets after To Be a Man. This shouldn't take too long to read. This is edited by Donald A. Wollheim. Cool science fiction, old-timey stories. This cost 35 cents. 35 cents. So I'll be reading this next, and then I'll get back to the Westerns. So those are some bookish things. Oh, also, I stopped by the El Cerrito, the El Cerrito Recycling Center on my way to El Cerrito Natural Grocery last Monday. I have Mondays off. And I was on my way to El Cerrito Natural Grocery, the grocery store that you go there if you want to spend 3 times what you would spend at any other grocery store anywhere. It's a great grocery store. It's just like kind of expensive. I mean, I got some asparagus. I brought the asparagus up to the counter, and they're like, that'll be $1 million. And I said, it's asparagus. And they looked at it. Oh, I was wrong. That's 2 bunches. That'll be $2 million. That's the kind of place it is. But it's really nice. It's really nice. You just, have to be rich. Anyway, I was on my way to El Cerrito Natural Grocery, and I'm driving there, and I think, you know what? If I just turn left, I can go to the recycling center. And at the El Cerrito Recycling Center, they've got a section for books, because you could bring books if you want to get rid of them, and they will be recycled if they're not rescued. So what they've got is they've got this big like dumpster thing, and it's under this roof with a couple walls there, and you go in there, and there's some shelves, and what they do is you put your books into this big dumpster, and the volunteers or whoever will go through it and put the books on the shelves. Only there are like people there that are always there, like always, and they lurk by the dumpster, so that when you bring books there, they'll leap upon them and dig through them and see what's good, and then they'll take them. And whatever survives them goes up on the shelves. And I'm fine with that, because, anything to rescue books from recycling. And so I thought, you know what? I'm on the 500 book challenge. I can't actually buy any books. I have no excuse to go to the recycling center. I'm not recycling anything, but what the heck? I'll rescue some books from recycling, and I did. I got a few books, not many. I got a few. I got 6 books. I got 6 books at the recycling center. Let's go through them, shall we? So, always an odd mix at the recycling center. It's just whatever books survive the people lurking by the dumpster and end up on the shelves. But still, you usually, you know what it's like? It's like a little free library, only one that you could walk in, and there are books you'd actually want to read there sometimes, unlike the free libraries in my neighborhood usually. But there were a few books that looked really interesting, and one of them was this. This is The Blue Max by Jack D. Hunter. The Blue Max. So this is a World War I novel, which I thought, that would work for BookTube at War, which will be happening in July. And I didn't realize this was a book. I think I saw the movie a long time ago on television or something. The name rings a bell. I don't remember anything about the movie. But there was a book, and it's about World War I German aces who, shoot down planes. And so I thought that looks interesting. I have no idea if it's any good. I haven't looked it up on Goodreads or anything yet. We'll see. Like I said, I've never really heard of the book, so it looked cool though. It looked cool. So I got the Blue Max for free at the recycling center. I rescued it from recycling. I have heard of this next fellow's books though. Louis L'Amour is usually at the recycling center because Louis L'Amour had 1 billion books published. So this is Westward the Tide. Westward the Tide. And I was trying to remember, did I read this book? I don't think I've read Westward the Tide. Although I might have. That's the way it goes with Louis L'Amour. So Westward the Tide, first time in paperback. So this is an older paperback, I guess. So there you go. I could add this to the long list of books that I will one day read for June on the Range. This is another Louis L'Amour book, but this one is a collection of short stories. This is From the Listening Hills. And this isn't all Westerns. It looks like these are all kinds of different short stories that he had written. And I've never read this book. I know for sure I've never read this one. I've never read many of his short stories that weren't just Westerns. So this will be interesting. Louis L'Amour, From the Listening Hills. It's pretty beat up. Most of the books you get at the recycling center are pretty beat up. So there you go. From the Listening Hills. Got that from Louis L'Amour. And this book, I was really happy to get because I've never read any of this guy's books. And I feel like I don't own any of this guy's books, I don't believe. And so I was happy to get it. This is Le Carré. Is that how you pronounce this guy's name? Le Carré. This is The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. I'm probably pronouncing that name wrong because I always pronounce names wrong. But it is The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, and it's supposed to be great. It's supposed to be great. Graham Greene says on the back, the best spy story I have ever read. So that's high praise from Graham Greene. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. There you go. Then I got this, which I don't know if I own a copy of this. I don't think I do. This is The Blind Spot by Austin Hall and Homer Eon Flint. Homer Eon Flint. This was a story that I believe was published in the 1920s in All Story magazine, if I'm remembering correctly. I've never read it. This is a beat to hell Ace edition that looks like it caught on fire. It looks like at some point this book caught on fire. It's been through a lot, The Blind Spot. But, it's still readable. So, here you go, The Blind Spot. This is science fiction. It says so right on the side. So I will add this to the Vintage Science Fiction Project. One more book to read before I die. I'm going to have to live forever. There's just no other way around it. So this is the most famous, fantastic novel of all time. Fabulous, says Forrest J. Ackerman about this book no one's heard of. A few of you have heard of it, but it's probably not the most famous, fantastic book of all time anymore, if it ever was, which I have my doubts. So that was that. One more that I got from the exciting recycling center, and that is The Parthian. The Parthian. This is a really cool looking historical novel. It has history, travel. It has travel. adventure, and sex. This is one to read, says the Hartford Courant, whatever. This is by Vic Hurley. Thanks, Vic Hurley. Vic Hurley, I think, really wanted Kirk Douglas to play the Parthian, I think, because he looks very Kirk Douglas-y in this, on this cover. But this book looks awesome. It's 360 something pages. Looks like a really cheesy, fun historical novel full of all of this stuff, history, travel, adventure, and sex. So yeah, of course I picked it up. It was free and it's going to be awesome. So there you go. I got all that stuff at the recycling center. That was exciting. Exciting times over here at Stately Vaughan Manor. That's what you get when you get a video about nothing, just random nonsense. I'm surprised I was even able to do this video. My valet, Wilkins, took the evening off, so I had a hard time putting on my own clothes. It's difficult. I had to go to my neighbor's house down the ways there to get help with my tie, because I had no one here to help me. I probably should have put on pants before I went there. They seemed a little... Well, next time I'll remember to do that. It's hard to know the order of things. I just don't pay attention when Wilkins does it. Oh well. Oh well. Where were we? Oh yes, we were talking about books and things. I have some more things to talk about. Hey, let's talk about the... I'm going to have to... No, I'm not going to edit this. Let's talk about the Pulp adventure project that I've got going on, because I found some things. So I was going through some comic book long boxes that I have way over there on the other side of the manor. If you collect comic books, or if you know somebody who's collected comic books, you've seen those big, long comic book boxes where people put the comics in. So I was actually going through there. I was like, do I have any Batman? I got lots of Superman, but do I have any Batman? I need that for the World's Finest project, which I'll talk about in a minute. Anyway, I was looking for Batman. I didn't find any, but in one of the boxes, I found books, because what I had done, I didn't have enough comics, I guess, to fill this whole box I went through, and I didn't, like I said, I didn't find any Batman. I did find a whole run of Captain America, though, by Mark Waid, when Mark Waid was on Captain America. I got the whole run in the original issues. That was, I also found the absolutely terrible Heroes Reborn Captain America. That was in there too. But I got the cool stuff. Anyway, that's off the subject. Anyway, I found some books in there that were filling up this space in one of these long boxes. And they were Pulp. And I knew I had these. Well, one I forgot completely that I had. But the other one, there were a couple that I knew I had somewhere, and I just didn't know where they were. I thought the Phantom of the Library stole them and put them somewhere. The Phantom of the Library, he comes and steals my books, and he stashes them in odd places. I know, he's terrible. Anyway, that's what I thought happened to these books. But no, they were in this long box, and I must have shoved them in there, forgot they were in there, and they've been in there for years. So anyway, I got this Doc Savage, which I knew I had. I really was sure I had it. And I do. Now this has The Man of Bronze and The Land of Terror. I do have other editions of this. Sorry, I was interrupted. Where was I? Oh yeah, this. So, this is from Nostalgia Ventures. They reprinted a bunch of the old Doc Savage and the Shadow pulps in these cool pulp-sized paperbacks, and each issue would reprint 2 issues of either Doc Savage or the Shadow. And I've shown these before, but this one was somehow taken away from the other ones and stashed in a comic book box. I don't know why, but anyway, here it is. And these editions from Nostalgia Ventures, they're completely unedited or untouched from the original Pulp magazine form, and I believe that the paperback books were a little messed with. I think. I'm not sure how much. So it's cool to have this. The only question I have with Nostalgia Ventures is that this is... What number was this? This is number 14. And Man of Bronze was the first Doc Savage novel ever written. So why wasn't this published in number 1? They were kind of all published out of order. I'm not sure why Nostalgia Ventures did that, but I'm glad to have this again. So I found a Doc Savage and I found a Shadow. Again, I knew I had this one somewhere, or at least I thought I did. And I did. It was just in there with Captain America. Who knows why. But anyway, yeah, here we go. The Shadow. This has 2 Adventures of the Shadow, so this will join my other Pulp stuff for the Pulp project I've got, where I'm going to be reading a ton of Pulp magazines about Pulp heroes. And the Shadow and Doc Savage, they were the biggest Pulp heroes, but they're not the only Pulp heroes. There's also the Spider. The Spider. And I've got the Spider versus the Empire State. And I thought, again, this was one I thought I had, but it wasn't with my other 2 paperbacks of the Spider. I've got these 2 paperbacks of the Spider. This is the City of Doom. This is Robot Titans of Gotham. And I knew I had a 3rd one somewhere. I had a strong suspicion, and it turns out I did. It was just, in there with Captain America for some reason. Each one of these big paperbacks has 3 Spider novels. I do have a bunch of other Spider novels that I'm going to be reading for the project, but they are all on the Kindle. They're all ebooks. Because the Spider, unlike the Shadow, the Spider is available on the Kindle. You can get a lot of Spider novels by Norvell Page. And those are wild. Those are crazy Pulp stories. But I also found something I had forgotten that I got. And I got this a while before I went on BookTube, I believe. This is the Green Llama. And this is the Complete Pulp Adventures. And I'd forgotten I had this. And I had seen a video about this. Who did it? I think it was Adam White from Dishelved with Adam White. I think he did a video about the Green Llama. And I was like, man, I should read some of those. Those sound interesting. I had it. I had one of them. I think there's more of these. But I only have this one. I don't have any others. So, but this one has like 5 of the Green Llama's adventures in it. The Green Llama, a pulp hero I have never read. So, and from what I hear, is kind of interesting. So I've got that. More bookish things. Let's waste some more time, shall we? So I'm doing the World's Finest Project, where I will read Superman and Batman every day of my life. It's going really well. I finished the first Superman omnibus, which was altogether really, really interesting. It was really interesting reading those Golden Age stories again. It has been a long time since I've read them. And I have great appreciation for those old stories where Superman doesn't fight many supervillains. The closest thing he gets is Lex Luthor and the Ultra Humanite, who are both super geniuses and come up with all these adventures to try to kill Superman. Nothing really works, obviously. I mean, he's Superman. But they were really cool. But he also fights a bunch of racketeers and gangsters and other social ills. And it was an interesting thing because back in the Golden Age of Superman, he was the only person with superpowers. That's why he was Superman. And I don't think they thought, really, well, let's make a villain with superpowers. It was a while before they did that. Because he's Superman. He's the only one with superpowers. That's what makes him... I mean, and that's why you read his comic at the time. Because this was like when superheroes were first starting. So the whole thing that you were reading for was to see Superman with his superpowers do crazy things like lift up cars and jump over buildings and outrace trains and things, which was a big deal back then. Not so much now. Now you pretty much need supervillains, but it was a different time. But the Golden Age Superman, that was a lot of fun. And I just finished reading Batman Year One, which was awesome. I wasn't the biggest fan of The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. because I don't think he got the character entirely right, and he certainly didn't get the character of Superman right at all. He also had Superman in that comic, and the guy in that comic book is not Superman. Frank Miller just doesn't understand Superman. But Batman in Batman Year One, he got that just right. That was incredible. And I think Batman Year One, more so even than The Dark Knight, I think, is the most influential Batman story that anybody did in the 1980s, I think. Even more, I think, story-wise, as far as the story, I think Year One left more of a mark than the Dark Knight Returns, in my opinion. It was a heck of a story. I might do a whole Epic Comic Book Wednesday on that if Steve feels like doing that. We'll see. So what am I reading next? Well, the next thing I'm going to be reading is The Greatest Superman Stories Ever Told. This has a very important place in my heart because this is the collection which I bought in 1987 that really made me into a Superman fan. I knew Superman, but mostly from the films and from the television show with George Reed. And he, George in the television show, I loved that show. And I used to watch that show a lot when I was a kid. And then our local station back in the 80s, they would have weekends where they would have like a Superman marathon because it was like this independent UHF station, Channel 20, and they would have marathons of the Adventures of Superman. That was the television show. And they would just show it all night long. And I would stay up as long as I possibly could to watch that show. Because even though George Reeves didn't look like Superman when you first start watching the show, it doesn't matter because it turns out he really is Superman. I mean, he was Superman when he played the character. He was completely convincing to me. And even when I got older, he was. So even though the effects, they're a little dated now. A little bit. Yeah, he was a good Superman. Anyway, I hadn't really spent much time with Superman comics, though, until John Byrne went to DC Comics and revamped Superman, which I was a big fan of at the time in 1986. But then I picked up this, and this has all kinds of golden and silver age Superman stories, which I had never read at that point. I'd never read any of this stuff. And so it was kind of a pleasant surprise just how great this stuff was. I am going to be doing an entire Epic Comic Book Wednesday on this next week, so I should probably shut up about this. But also, as well as reading that, I'm also going to be reading this. This is The Greatest Batman Stories Ever Told, which came out a couple years after the Superman one. I would like to do an Epic Comic Book Wednesday on this, but I don't think Steve Donahue has this probably. This is probably a little scarce nowadays because it came out, this came out before the Tim Burton movie came out, so this is old. But it has a lot of really, really cool stories in it. And I did read this, but, I wasn't even in my 20s yet when I read this, so it was a while ago. I'm a little bit older than that now. A little bit older. So this will be fun too. And speaking of Batman, so when I was a little kid, I had some of those little digest comics from DC. DC would have these 100-page little digest comics. And I had Superman, I had Batman, I had Sergeant Rock, I had, what else did I have? Jonah Hex, I had Jonah Hex. I had a few of them. And, I got all these when I was a little kid. And I should mention that, in case you don't know, the 500 book challenge, the challenge where I have to read 500 books before I buy any new ones, comics don't count. If they did count, I wouldn't be doing the challenge because I can't not buy comic books. And I found on eBay the Batman one, and it's so tiny. But this is the one that I had when I was a little kid, and I read it over and over and over again. This isn't the exact one I had because the one I had fell to pieces because I read it so much. But this is a pristine, really nice copy of this teensy tiny comic book. And I'm like, I don't remember this being so small, but that's because I was 8. I was a little smaller myself when I was 8. So I got this, and this is awesome. It's got 7 thrillers, including a novel-length battle with the Joker. Apparently, novel length is 22 pages. But this is, together in one volume, the best stories of the Dark Knight Detective's 4-decade, 4-star career. So he had only been around 4 decades when this was published. And nowadays, if they were doing it, it would be a 5-star career. But at the time, 4 stars was pretty good. And, you know, it's all reprinted in teensy tiny size, you know. But it's got some cool old Golden Age stories. And it's actually really cool. You know, I've got my glasses. I could read this. I've got Two-Face. Two-Face is in here. It's really cool. We got a comic book story from the 1960s. Ka-chock. Ka-chock. He's ka-chocking that gun right out of that guy's hand. And we also have a Neil Adams Joker story. That's the novel length. It's novel length, you know, 22 pages. And this is like his famous Joker story is in here. Neil Adams. And Denny O'Neil wrote it. Denny O'Neil wrote some good Batman stories. Batman was his kind of character. And they brought the dark back to the Dark Knight. So this was like an awesome thing to get. It, you know, just from nostalgia alone. This was kind of a fun thing because I read this and the Superman one, and I read them all. Superman, this, Jonah Hex, Sergeant Rock. I read them over and over and over again. I got to find those other ones now that I found this, so I can get them all again. You know. Do we have anything else to say? I don't know. I'm going on and on. But you know, I couldn't figure out very much to say tonight, so, you know, random bookish stuff. Hope you enjoyed it. What is tomorrow? Tomorrow is Friday? Yeah, tomorrow's Friday. I've got nothing on Friday. But then on Saturday, I'm hoping to get a video up. Hopefully, it's the 500 book challenge video that I want to do that's going to take more than 20 minutes to do. I'm hoping to have that up on Saturday. I won't have anything up on Sunday because I am traveling once again to the Rustic Fawn Lodge. And Wilkins probably won't come with me there either. Darn that Wilkins, you know, making me put on my own clothes. I didn't even put on any real pants today. I got sweatpants on. You don't believe me. Look, sweatpants. Scandalous. See, the people that left early didn't get to see that. It's probably for the best. Okay, I'll shut up now. We'll catch you next time.